The police came to deal with this homeless man. No one could have ever imagined what would happen next. Hello friends, many successful and rich people, those who have achieved everything the right way, love to repeat these words. When you help others, first of all, help yourself. Most of them are sure that this method will actually work. I can't say that for sure, but a huge number of stories where ordinary people helped others without any malicious intent make you think that this is really the only way, or at least I would really like to believe in it. And today, my friends, I will tell you the story of two police officers and a man who turned out to be at his worst. And I think that you will like it. Ricardo Roman and Samuel Boyce, two policemen in New York who have been partners for more than 10 years patrolling the streets of the big city, is not always peaceful, and at one time each of them even had to go through a shooting. It would seem that even the strongest men, whether you want to admit it or not, developed a bias and sometimes hostile attitude to certain groups of people. After all, whatever one may say, but many of them even do not try to change anything in their life and probably even like what they are doing. On October 3, 2019, the officers arrived on call to a cafe located in the Manhattan area, and it turned out that the reason for the call was an ordinary homeless man. The employees of the institution called the policeman claiming that this man was preventing them from working. Although he did not show any aggression, he was just quietly walking on the street. But this time they were distracted by the barking of a dog and screaming people, and looking out the window of the institution, they saw a homeless person sitting on the ground. He had blood on his hand and bite marks. They quickly figured out what was the matter. A bunch of stray hungry dogs began to attack the poor guy. He didn't know what to do in that case, so he began waving his hands trying to scare them away, thus making the four-legged creatures even angrier. According to the workers in the cafe, the man lived around the corner near the coffee house, but this was not the main reason why the policemen were surprised. He may be a homeless person, but he is still a man. When Ricardo and Samuel approached him, the stranger began to hide his hand on which bite marks appeared. Frightened by the policemen who were approaching him, he even said that he was completely alright. But the officers understood that this was not the case. It was clear that the homeless person was afraid of them like fire, and most likely he had a reason for this. But then he could not even imagine how this meeting would turn out to be. Approaching the poor man, the officers said that he had no need to be afraid. They were actually there to help him. After that, they asked to look at his hand. With slight uncertainty, the homeless man showed Ricardo his hand. The policeman treated his wound, and as the homeless man himself later recalled, it was some kind of miracle. For a long time on the streets, I was counting on something completely different. But these men decided not only to help me, but also to check that everything was okay after they had treated my wound, said the homeless man. One of the officers even went into the cafe and had a conversation with the employees and the administrator, saying that it was inhuman to see the other person in need of help and not only be unhelpful, but even call the cops on him. As you might have guessed, friends, of course, the story did not end there. To make sure that the homeless man is alright and he will not catch the infection from the bite, the officers offered to take him to the hospital. The homeless man wanted to refuse, but Ricardo and Samuel insisted there was a risk to his life after being bitten by a stray dog. On the way to the hospital, the officers checked the guy's documents, and luckily he had them because, without it, they could have had problems in the medical institution. The unfortunate man was called Wilford Fallman Jr. He was 34 years old and for the last 7 years was living on the streets. Besides the complaint of the owner of the coffee shop, the homeless man had 2 unfulfilled orders from the court. But all this did not become a problem for the officers. Additionally, the policemen decided to wait for him, after which they treated him to lunch in a nearby cafe and took him back all the way. Wilford was confused. It seemed to him then that he was participating in some show where the policemen did good deeds for the camera. But the catch was, the cameras did not come out that evening. The homeless man thanked his heroes and promised Ricardo and Samuel that tomorrow he would pay his fines. As for our heroes, later they said that it was sad to see a man in such a state. We just did our job to help him, and as it turned out, Wilford really wanted to change his life the next day, they said. The homeless man, as he promised, went to court, which made the police happy. After that, they even began to visit him every day, bringing food and giving important tips on how to get out of a difficult life situation, and, by the way, Wilford absorbed words like a sponge. After a few days, he was even given shelter, and additionally to this, the police found his mother, who was in Puerto Rico, her hometown, and reported about the son. They found out that back in 2002, a 16-year-old Puerto Rican full of hope, having earned some money at home, came to the US to study and become an actor. He had great hopes for a bright future. However, as it often happens, he quickly ran out of money and didn't have enough not only for his education, but even for food. Naturally, he stopped attending an educational institution. After some time, he was involved in a variety of part-time jobs, but the money was not enough to afford rent. So gradually, the ambitious young man ended up on the streets and later became homeless. Considering the fact that he was from Puerto Rico, he always had a hard time finding jobs. He did not have support from friends and relatives in the USA. He was completely alone. This story made the policemen look at him in a completely different way, and they decided to help him. I remember in early November, they came to me in their personal cars after working hours and told me to go with them. When I asked where we were driving, they just had smiles on their faces. They took me to the hairdresser, but they did not stop there. Ricardo and Samuel were looking at me and I could not understand what was happening. Later, they took me to a men's clothing store where they bought me a suit, a tie, a shirt, and glasses. Looking at myself in the mirror, I could not believe my eyes. I couldn't believe that was really me, Wilford told later with tears in his eyes. Wilford's transformation cost the cops $200, and it was just amazing, but it was not all. The officers put the guy in the car and took him to the local pizzeria where Samuel's friend worked, and when they said that they were waiting for him there, 15 minutes later, Wilford was already employed. More than half a year passed, the former homeless man is fulfilling his duties and the money he earns is enough for him to rent a room in New York now. The three of those guys hang out on weekends. You could say that the friendship was born. Wilford said, "The streets broke me, but these guys always supported me and gave me the opportunity to believe in myself. I don't know why they did it. It seems to me that I know them all my life. They are real professionals, and I just adore them." But the heroes themselves said, "We are trying to make people understand that homelessness is not at all a disease, and even more so not a crime. Each of us can fall very low in all different circumstances, and the most important thing is to find a person who will believe in you and make you move on." In fact, this is what happened. We spent only $200, and now he earns twice more. Money is not the most important thing. The most important thing is to give hope for a better future. Friends, do you agree with these words of the policeman? Be sure to write your opinion in the comments below. But for today, this is it. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and see you soon.